I kept a pretty sweet dad tan from flip flops and coaching soccer for a lot of years. And,
there you go.
And doing some other stuff. So yeah, it's I mean, there's room for everybody to volunteer, and it's like I said, it's always been important to me. I know it's important to you. It's like you said, it's important to everybody at the top of this company to get out and kind of give back. We've been afforded the ability and blessed to have the opportunity to really kind of impart some of what we know and kind of how we grew up and some of our morals and values into other kids and other people's. And it's you just get out and kind of find something important to you and spend a little time doing it, and it's great.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the Cold War Spotlight. You might hear a little bit of rain in the background. I think we've got some tornado-like weather going on today, but really excited to finally get Ryan Bell. I was going to say one of our newer additions to the team, but he's been here now coming up close to a year. So we finally got him to sit down and have a conversation with us. So welcome, Ryan.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Ryan. Give us a little bit of a background in your career arc and how you got into oil and gas.
Honestly, getting into oil and gas, it was never really a thought. I went to a small college in Western Oklahoma and got a manufacturing engineering degree. And I got out and actually worked as a manufacturing engineer for about a year, to the point that I decided that may not pay as well or be what I wanted to do. Ended up going to work in oil and gas for Weatherford International. That's kind of where we met. But
good old Weatherford.
Yeah, I think all paths seem to cross there at one point or another.
There's a lot of folks that have worked at Weatherford over the years, and so that's how Ryan and I originally met. It was before I made my sales turn. I was fighting the good fight down in South Texas in ops, and Ryan was sending us work. Thank goodness, keeping us busy.
I started there in I think it was 2003, around that time, 2003, 2004. Actually started just as soon as the Barnett Shale was kicking off, and then within about 8 months transitioned into Elk City, Oklahoma, and worked my way through engineering and operations there. Ended up in Oklahoma City as a kind of a technical manager, and then bounced back into operations for a year in El Reno, and then went back into sales management back in Oklahoma City.
So, back in the Barnett, you mentioned the Barnett, that was always one of the more unique plays. I think I didn't get to play a lot there. We only did one job. And it was one of the most unique jobs I've ever done. It was on a golf course.
Yeah.
Sound barrier walls. It was the only time, I think, in my ops career that I had to mandate that everybody wear their hard hats even in the break area, because you'd get an errant golf shot that would fly over the sound barrier walls and ping off the pumps.
Yeah, that's about right. It was definitely, when I was managing the engineering operations, I didn't like sending engineers there because they had it way nicer in Decatur than what I had the ability to give them in El Reno or Oklahoma City. So they'd come back and they'd start wanting to talk about transfers. So that we ended up having to kind of change the way we did some of that. My preference was just I'll go down there and take that horrible duty off your hands if that's what needs to happen. But
on that job down there, we were working with the golf course, and the first meeting I had with the operator and the golf course, we had to meet with them, is on their, they were still running a business. The golf pro said, man, if you want guys, the crew vans, because the location was tight, crew vans can park in the golf course parking lot over here in the overflow, and I can just leave a bunch of golf carts for them to shuttle back and forth. And I could not get no out of my face faster.
Yes.
Because I was like, we're not going to give a bunch of golf carts to a bunch of frac cans.
Oh no, that breeds problems like you can't imagine. We got invited to a Chamber of Commerce banquet, just kind of inadvertently going to a hotel at the same time whenever I was in El Reno, and it was the biggest fiasco that I've ever had to deal with because our guys, we didn't know as supervisors that they'd been invited. They went based on the invitation that they actually had, and ate all of the shrimp cocktail and drank all the free beer and did a lot of things like that. So you've really got to watch where you send frac cans if you're not careful.
No, it's some of the greatest guys in the world.
Absolutely.
But it was always fun, and you never knew what was going to happen when you were out in the field with those guys. I do have to bring up, and we may have to cut this out. We'll have to talk about it later. But there's a great story. You've been in sales for a long time. You've seen a little bit of everything. One of the things in sales is you build relationships, you triage issues, you help, obviously you're selling, but you help the customer, see the value, you help, your part ops too, there's a whole lot to it. One of the greatest stories you've ever told me, and we're going to leave names out to protect the innocent and the guilty, was a PowerPoint presentation for a quarterly review.
It was. It was the first quarterly review that I had not been a part of for this customer, because I happened to be down here in Houston going to a post-pad review for a Tuscaloosa Marine shale well that was a huge part of another customer's business. I'd actually put everything together in kind of a standardized format and sent it to the operations group where this happened. And I still can't believe this whole story's real. And I told them, all you have to do is just update the numbers. It's like, take this number from this quarter out, put this number from this quarter in. You guys have the numbers, just replace the numbers. It's super simple. They, on the other hand, thought they would be jokesters and be funny and replace not only that, but some other stuff, being really goofy and just being out of pocket. They in turn decided to replace some of the goals for the next quarter. They replaced those goals, but whenever it was time to show the presentation, they'd replaced the goals in the presentation, but they had actually printed the presentation handouts for everybody and handed them out without replacing them, and their joke being in that.
Yeah, so the joke goals weren't supposed to leave the office.
Exactly, and they were in poor taste.
Yeah.
But the main one was the goal for the next quarter was to quit working for your cheap ass. And that it was not. They thought it was funny. The operator they were working for in no way found it comical.
Yep.
At all. And so my phone, while I was in my meeting, was absolutely blowing up. And I was like, man, I hope nobody got hurt or something, because that's kind of our first thought. And so I got out of my meeting and I called them back, and it was my counterpart, the region operations manager. And he was like, hey dude, we got a big problem.
We've made a huge mistake.
And I was like, what? And he was like, man, the presentation. And I was like, how could it even gone bad? It was just, take this out, put this in. And he explained the situation to me, and I was like, oh yeah, this could not have been worse. I mean, it was the kind of like, no, we're going to shut down now with, I don't remember, I think it was 3 fleets. It was at a minimum 2. We're not going to finish the pads. We're just going to shut down, and we're going to kind of move you off. And the worst part is that one of my, to this day, close personal friends was the manager of that area. And so not only did it shine a bad light on our company, but it shined a bad light, or maybe, like, I think even to a point he thought that I'd had something to do with it. So it was like, I felt like it almost like hurt his feelings. So yeah, there was a lot of I'm sorry's and please forgive me's that came out of it.
I kind of picture the guy calling you having the kind of the same type body language as the guy from The Hangover when he makes the call to the guy's wife and he's like, hey, we fucked up.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, hey,
oh
man.
Yeah.
I probably can't say that, but hey, we messed up.
That was really kind of how that call went. It was like, oh dude, this is so bad.
And so, in sales, you don't get those calls as often as you did in ops. But I could always tell whenever one of, the field soups, something would happen and he'd call and it would have that same kind of demeanor, same tone of voice. Hey man, like, oh shit, here we go. What's going on?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and back then, where you and I were, it was even if we were in sales, we still handled a lot of operational issues because I'd spent at that point probably 8 or 9 years in operations, and so I didn't have to call and ask any questions or anything like that. Like I knew how to fix the situation from an operational viewpoint, and I could just say, this is what we're going to do. And I'd had a great relationship with all of our operations groups. So I could just call them and say, hey, this is the problem. Let's fix it like this. And it's like, oh, okay, that works, and we'll do that. Yeah. It's not always the case everywhere, but that's kind of how it worked back then.
And we've been fortunate. We've seen a lot of changes in the industry from, I got in 2010. I was late to get in. You got in much sooner than me, but we saw, I saw the kind of the onslaught of the Eagle Ford. I saw, the transition from just kind of like doing vertical wells to horizontals and doing zipper pads and everything else. And then, obviously the downturn in 15. We all had to kind of adapt and evolve in how we operated, and pricing went completely different from what we had normally done. That was also probably the transition for the operator self-sourcing chemicals and sand. Mm-hmm. And then you come up to, and then we were both at Weatherford. We shut down the product line, and then we both stayed on at Weatherford for a short period of time. You went off to other places, and then obviously COVID hits and changes up a lot. Coming from your background where you're mainly, you're used to the horsepower and iron, what was the appeal to come over to cold bore and say, hey, I want to, see this, this new technology. I want to get involved in my career. I want to do something different.
Honestly, it was not having we'll take it back. So after I left Weatherford, I transitioned to FTS. While I was at FTS, cold bore kind of started coming out. So SMARTPad was kind of out there. We started having cold bore show up on some of our fleets, and so what we thought we knew, or what it showed me, what we thought we knew, we didn't know everything. The level of data that we were getting and the level of insight into our own business really kind of it spurred on additional questions, because I could see in more detail what was actually happening inside my own business. Mm-hmm. Compared to what I'd had before. And so that kind of plugged into me like, well, okay, well, there's something there. And as I kind of continued and worked inside not only that frac company and then kind of continued, whenever I had the opportunity to kind of look around and I needed to get back home to my kids and some other stuff, I was like, well, what other opportunities do I have? And I had some other opportunities at some frac companies and stuff, but it was the opportunity to come to cold bore and build out a business that had such a great product and is to me a leader in an industry, and it had already proven itself to me inside other businesses. I couldn't turn that down. I mean, it was absolutely something that drew me to it.
No, I mean, you came in at such an interesting time. We were, obviously, we're hopefully on this growth trajectory of 24. It looks like it's turning out to be fantastic. But it was really neat, kind of, because you and I have known each other for probably 10 years now. And it was funny because we always kind of kept coming back to that when we'd have conversations, like, we're probably going to wind up at the same company again at some point. and it turned out to be, over the past summer that actually happened. And you just kind of hit the ground running. And it was kind of, I remember when we hired you, and this speaks well to the people, your network and everything else, where people were like, hey man, Bell, where you landing? Like, what are you doing? And I had people calling because they knew I was friends with you, be like, where's Bell's next move? I was like, oh, well, you'll see, and so it's been really cool because, you're kind of the anchor of that Oklahoma City area, you're hitting Midland, you're hitting all these different places. So, that part of sales, like the travel and stuff, because you're a family guy, you've got a lot of stuff going on with the kids. Like, how do you kind of manage that? Just to go hop on a flight and go spend, a week in Midland or whatever.
It's honestly, what I look at is in my house, everything revolves around a calendar. And so every month to 2 months, I mean, it's a progression, but we have this big, it's almost like a desk calendar, but it's this big calendar and it hangs by the garage door in my house. And so everything that we do or that we're doing for not only myself, but everything that my wife's got going on, and then my kids are both super busy. Everything that we're all doing goes on that calendar. And so whenever I'm looking to leave, and I know at least once a month I need to get to Midland, and then I've got all these other events that I'm part of and just different things like that. Personally and professionally, I just look at that calendar and it's like, oh, okay, well, this gap right here really fits what I can do. And so I start setting meetings and planning to go do things inside that gap, because what Cold War's allowed me to do is spend more time than I've had the ability to spend in the last probably 5 years with my family. But it's also allowed me the ability to kind of manage my own business. Like, nobody really worries about what I do because I'm busy all the time. And so nobody questions it. I'm in Midland this week, and oh, hey, if I need to go to Denver, hey, I need to go to Denver, and I can get on a flight and I can go. Hey, we need you to come to Houston. All right, well, it goes on the calendar, and then everybody knows. My family's been great to allow me the ability to plan around that. So this week we're here. Next week, my son has 8th grade promotion on Thursday. We have a big awards ceremony on Friday. My daughter graduates high school on Saturday, and on Sunday's Mother's Day.
Yep.
Everybody knows
Don't forget
that,
Mother's Day.
Yeah, Mother's Day. Don't forget. Just because she's not your mom doesn't mean she's not a mom.
That's true.
So I have the ability inside Cold War at this point to be able to kind of plan around that, and it really makes it easier for me to juggle family life, and it's been great. I can't complain about it whatsoever.
And that's been one of the really cool things. Like, what we've tried to do at Cold War is culture build, right? And it's a culture of work hard. Nobody needs to micromanage you, because like if you're having to micromanage, then what's the point, right?
Right.
And so and so there's a trust factor. It goes both ways. That you're going to go out, you're going to go, and you're going to work hard and everything else. And we're also not going to go and, what are you doing today?
Right.
I need to know, because like you have to maintain the family, a happy home combined with work.
Right.
The two can't not be opposite each other.
Well, and we've got a really good set of kind of internal protocols and internal calls and things that we do that are on. Like, we have a really good, pretty strict cadence about how those go. Now, if you've got a meeting that sets across something like that, obviously the customers come first.
Yep.
And so we can do that. But outside of that, it gives us the ability to kind of bend and flex and move our schedules around. So if I've got something at one of my kids' schools that I need to go to, I can set that inside my own calendar and I can go do that. But that doesn't mean that before that and after that, I'm not making sales calls or working with operations to do something or trying to get things fixed to the point that it sets Cold War's business on top. I mean, we just work together very well doing that.
And I've kind of experienced the same. Like, I have been probably more present and attending more kid events than I ever did, which is fantastic, because like before it was just almost impossible to do. And yet I'm probably logging more hours,
right?
And doing more. It's just the time management's much easier, working with Cold War.
Right. No, it really is. And volunteering is big to me. So I try to volunteer a lot of my time. A lot of it ends up actually going to just different youth organizations, between Boy Scouts and soccer and some things like that. I spent a lot of time in the last several years trying to dedicate some of my time to those, because they're important. They're not only important to me, but they're important to the kids.
Yeah,
and so I do that. I'm the scoutmaster for my local scout troop there in the town I live in. So it's been great, and it's cool to be able to see the progression of the kids year over year over year, how much better they get, how much they mature, and how much those of us adults that kind of spend that amount of time and put in that amount of dedication to them. It's good. The kids a lot of times don't see like where they started and where they've come to, but us adults, we talk about it all the time. I mean, we've got kids that have made just great strides in the last couple of years, from kind of when you get them, it's like, well, I mean, they're honestly like clay, and you can kind of mold them. And I mean, I'd encourage anybody to do that. If you've got the ability, if you've got the time or the resources, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of money. If you don't have money, try to find some time. and do that. But that's actually what Cold War's afforded me the ability to do, is give a little more of my time to some of those organizations that mean a lot to me.
Yep. No, and I think that's important. Like, giving back and volunteering is something I think, I know at the upper levels of Cold War certainly push and love to do. I know Blair's involved in a lot of stuff. Shane's involved, Alex is involved. So the C-suite kind of like, wants to set that example and they endorse all of that.
They do.
I just recently did an event. A buddy of mine got me involved in it last year, and it's a fun event, but it's somewhat stressful the day of, and it's a kids barbecue cook-off. And it's like, they bring all these little old smoky pits out there. I think we had 62 or 66 kids cook this year, and they range from peewees to like juniors to seniors. I think that's the categories. So we had to light all the charcoal. They didn't want us to use match light this year, so we had to use regular charcoal, which is, lighting 66 pits. I looked like I was crying, like I tear gassed myself, because you're in a show barn, and so there's not a whole lot of ventilation to begin with, and all the smoke. But then you have to check and make sure they did a pork chop entry, and then they have an open. And so, I mean, you're walking around, you're having to check temperature on some of these things, because you got to, all the like city leaders are the judges.
Right. You don't want to make everybody sick.
Yeah, you got to want to make everybody sick, and feel like, all right, is this pork chop done? Yes, we checked it 3 times. Like, you're good to go. You can eat it. But we had, I think a sheriff's candidate for sheriff who was a judge. We had city councilmen. We had judges. And I was like, man, we can't get anybody sick, guys.
You can burn it all you want, but we can't have it raw.
Can't have it raw. And they put a lot of trust in us to make sure that we're not going to poison them. So, but yeah, that's always a fun event. But I love doing some, that type of stuff. I've been involved in stuff up in Montgomery County, Conroe, for a long time. And now with the kids, it's, we're much more kind of full of sports these days.
Right.
But there's a lot of volunteering with that. Like, I've been, suckered into coaching more times than I can count.
Yeah, I kept a pretty sweet dad tan from flip-flops and coaching soccer for a lot of years. And,
there you go.
And doing some other stuff. So yeah, it's there's room for everybody to volunteer. And it's like I said, it's always been important to me. I know it's important to you. It's like you said, it's important to everybody at the top of this company to get out and kind of give back. We've been afforded the ability and blessed to have the opportunity to really kind of impart some of what we know and kind of how we grew up and some of our morals and values into other kids and other people's. And it's, you just get out and kind of find something important to you and spend a little time doing it. And it's great.
So I know you love the outdoors. We're both big hunters. I think you shoot sporting clays a lot more than I. You and another guy just won second place or first place in an event the other day?
Yeah, we got second place. We were beat. Man, the guys that beat us look like absolute professionals. They came out with a cart load of Krieghoffs and stuff.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There was $100,000 worth of shotguns on there. But we had a great time. And honestly, I didn't really even know what it was for. It was a customer and friend of mine. He texted me on Thursday night and said, "Hey, we're going to shoot tomorrow, or you're going to shoot tomorrow." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "What are we shooting?" And he was like, "An event." And I was like, "Okay, where at?" He said, "Be here at 8:30. I was there at 8:30. When I pulled up, I see a bunch of Boy Scouts in Class A uniforms. And I was like, "Oh, well, that's kind of interesting. This wasn't expected." And so I get out and kind of get our stuff set up, and we meet. And I walked up and we were talking, and I was like, "Man, this isn't really what I was expecting. Like, I've never been to I didn't know they did this." And he was like, "Oh, they've done it for a couple of years. It's a kind of a sponsorship shoot. They use it as a fundraising opportunity." And it's like, that's really kind of cool. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm an Eagle Scout." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." I was like, "You probably don't know this, but I'm the Scoutmaster from our troop." And he was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Man, I'm an Eagle Scout as well." And so it's kind of funny how all of our paths crossed. But then we went out and we had a good time. The wind beat us to death, but we shot fairly decent. We ended up getting second place in that tournament, but it was more about having the opportunity to let the kids shoot. We let the kids shoot our shotguns and just really kind of messed with them a lot. Just because that's how we are. We're kind of geared that way. But we had a really good time, and kind of got to share some of what we know and talk to each one. They had scouts pulling the targets at each station. it gave us the ability to talk to each one of those kids and just kind of say, hey, yeah, like we're both Eagle Scouts. So not that you need to kind of look up to us or anything, but
bow down.
So there's no kiss in the ring kind of thing, but it definitely showed them like, hey, listen, and we had the ability to tell them like it really does help. Like it's what you're learning here in this program can really be passed out into other areas of your life, and I mean it's really going to follow you and it's going to help you later.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool to get to do that.
Very cool. So we're gonna kind of shift back a little bit more industry. So you've been a part of frac completions, whatever, I think since 2003. Like, how have you seen the data evolve? How have you seen like collection? How have you seen kind of everything that's happening on site change in the last 21 years?
It's evolved from kind of nothing to what we do, really. I mean, that's really kind of the two stakes that I drive in the ground, I guess. Is the first one is we had data, but it was on like a big chief notepad written in pencil. I mean, we didn't really know what to keep. I still remember the first horizontal wells that we went out on, the first multi-well pads that we went out on, because originally when I started, it was we meet at the yard at midnight, and then everybody loads up and we go to the location and we pump at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we rig down and then we go back home. And so we gathered data, we had CSV files, but all that was to us was something that you burned onto a CD or you put on a disk and it got dropped in the job packet, and then but wherever the job packet ended up is just where it ended up. I mean, it went in a box someplace.
Yeah, and it was just, half the time it never even made it back to the operator probably.
Right.
Because they weren't necessarily doing anything with it.
Yeah, all I did was, at the end as a field engineer, we printed the graphs. We legitimately just printed them, and that was it.
Yep.
Nobody really ever went back very often and looked at it. Every once in a while, we'd have to go pull those files out and maybe re-emulate a job. But it was just because somebody asked, hey, do you have the ability to pick closure? Or where did the well break down? Or what happened right here? Why did we catch this pressure spike? And you could go back and you could rerun the job and you could pull, normally it was a pressure point, you could pull pressure and you could look at it. But anything outside of that, it was all kind of trial and error.
Yep.
And so as we evolved, it went from writing stuff down in a tally book to then we kind of moved into the Excel phase and kind of keeping track of stuff in Excel. And then that kind of stagnated for a while. And honestly, there's still a lot of operators that do that. They're still keeping Excel spreadsheets. I know of one operator that I've spoken to recently that they said, oh yeah, we kind of just write stuff down in Excel, and I've got to get in there every day because before the morning meeting, I have to update all of our Excel information, and then we just send it out. I was like, well, that's great, but that's a very small volume of data, and it's every time that you're touching it, you have the ability for a clerical error. But even outside of that, there's much better, more scientific, concise, clean, just an all-in-all better way to manage your business than by doing that. And so we've had a lot of those conversations, but it's kind of interesting to see how you still kind of got the gamut from all of that. But now with SMARTPad through Cold Bore, it's insane the amount of data that you have and the touch to be able to really kind of go in and see exactly what each thing is, and you can keep track of it and you can monitor it, and now if you want to make little changes, you can do that. And you can really see kind of how those play out, both in kind of in production, but also on location, because we're not only keeping track of times. Like that's not it. You're not sitting there with a stopwatch. We're keeping track of times and volumes and just how the whole gamut of the whole operation goes in completions.
And I go back, I got really just a couple jobs maybe with the CDs, but then thumb drives became a deal, and they would be big enough that you could put all your data on it. And they would get dropped in an envelope, FedEx to the operator, or if somebody was going to Houston, they might get dropped in the job folder and taken to Houston, whatever. All the jobs weren't put on on-prem servers, so even at the district level, all your jobs were on these thumb drives. Well, folders get torn, thumb drives get lost. Like the operator with the thumb drive, that was also 15, 16 downturn, a lot of movement, people going different places. thumb drives got misplaced.
Right.
Or they might open a drawer and there's 50 thumb drives. Well, then you run into security protocols. You
Right.
can't necessarily put the thumb drives on a computer and find out what's on it. So I was getting phone calls from operators, and after we shut down frac, and 18 and 19 before I left, where they're like, hey, we have nothing on this set of wells that they may have been trying to sell or go back in and refrac something, but we don't know anything about them. We have an invoice.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's probably all you're going to get. Let me go see what I can dig up. And of course, I can't find the thumb drive from this particular set of wells. I can't find anything outside of really maybe the invoice, and we can try to piece together a completions packet. Maybe I had stuff on my computer from when they were my customer or whatever, but you go back and it's like, there's not a lot I can find for you.
Yeah, sometimes you could find the post-job report or something like that, but that's only going to tell you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's giving you volumes and totals, and that's really about it. I
Give
mean,
you
in
the amount
reality,
of prop that we pumped, but if it was when they were self-sourcing, that may not have even been on the invoice if there was not a pumping charge.
right? Exactly.
And it wasn't going to tell you what it was.
No, it's not. Yeah, you're going to get some types, and you're going to. I mean, you get a few things like that, but you don't have any context into why anything changed. There's no contextual information in anything like that, and the contextual information is really what you need to be able to. That's why decisions were made, or that's how they were made, and it all lies within that small piece of context that you may not have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years, 10 later, I've been called. I'm like you. I've been called repeatedly, like, hey, do you have the post-job report for this well? Well, I can try. Let me see if I can find it. That's what we all say.
Yep.
And yeah, I used to, but that was 2 computers ago. Or, let me call Houston and see if they can go dig in some boxes and find it.
Man, the best recourse I had was going through, getting access to like maybe the field engineer's email, because he was no longer with the company, and having to go through the legal channels to be able to open it up to be able to do searches for post jobs.
Right.
I've talked to some customers that we've had that have sold, where they've actually said that that's SmartPad's brought value because they could actually turn around and give the customer the entire history of the well.
Right.
They had drilling, now they've got completions, and then of course they've had production. So now they've been able to say, here's exactly how we completed the well, here's all the graphs, here's everything that you need to see.
Exactly, and that's really kind of the way I describe it a lot of times. Is to me now, before Cold War, at least to me, whenever you were looking at the life history of a well, it was kind of like, yeah, you had a book, but somebody took the middle of it and tore it out.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it may be the most expensive part, and there's a lot of information inside that middle piece. And you can read the prelude and you can read the last chapter, but it's not really going to matter if you don't have anything in the middle of the story.
Yep.
So now we've got everything on the drilling side. We've got everything, whether it's the production data or however you want to read that. You know how the well's turning out. You've got everything at the end. But now everything inside the middle of the book or the well is now it's all lined out, and it's all sequential, and it's all based on the same clock. And it's all now it reads the whole well now reads like a story.
Yep.
And you can hand that story to anybody that's looking, whether they want to buy the well or they're looking at property, or whether it's somebody in 5 years wants to turn around and say, hey, why is this like this? Or why did we frack this like this? Or what wire line did this? Or who did this? Or why'd they do it? Doesn't really matter what it is. We've got all that information, and there's no better way to be able to make everything make sense and align than actually being able to just like kind of pull open SmartPad and look at it like that.
And that's what has been interesting on this build of building SmartPad and everything else, because like, to use your book analogy, it's like we're writing, if there's a 5-well pad, we're writing 5 simultaneous books that are part of a series and having to put it all together to make sense.
Right.
And so like, all these different data channels coming in and everything else, like where before, to use what we were talking about earlier, thumb drives, like they were getting frac thumb drives, but they're also getting one from wireline.
Right.
And then maybe pump down, maybe not.
Yeah. Most of the time not.
Yeah, most of the time not. And so you go back and you look at it and it's like, okay, well, how, you can piece all that together. It's very time consuming, and it's not going to be tremendously accurate.
Right. Once again, every time you touch that data, it gets a little more iffy, because now you're trying to, it's whether somebody like keyed it in themselves or whatever, but every time you touch it, it gets a little, like, you really kind of got to think about it. Is that right? Now you got to put another set of eyes on it to make sure that number matches this number.
Yep.
And it just kind of works through that direction. But now you don't really have to do that anymore. It's all right there. It's simple. It's easy. It's quick, and it's right. The main thing is that it's right.
Yep. They've supplied me with some rapid fire questions to put you on the spot.
Yeah. That's all I need.
So we can kind of run through a couple of these. So you work for a tech company. I know you're a hands-on kind of guy. You like to build and stuff like that. But is there an app on your phone that is something that you have to have?
Yeah, there is, and I use it all. It's probably the one I use the most outside of SmartPad. It's OnX.
OnX. Oh,
the like OnX Hunt.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
And I use it for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
I don't use it for
tell me about that. What's that?
Well, I use it. It's what it is. It's kind of like I think they call it an online scouting platform.
Okay.
But I use it not only to, you pull it up and you've got maps. Okay, it's like a satellite map, and it's really what you do is you can kind of go through, and so I can use it on the properties that I hunt to find specific areas that maybe animals will move through, or that they may use more than others, or where I want to set a stand up. But it also tells you who owns certain properties. So if I want to try to get in contact with that person, or if I want to go fish this is a really great looking pond and my son loves to fish. So maybe I can figure out what their tax address is, and I can find a way to get in contact with them based on that. So all I got to do is click it, and it shows me who owns that piece of property. And then I can try to reach out to them and get ability to do that. Or I've done the same thing for scouts to find places to take the kids camping. All kinds of stuff.
I'm definitely gonna have to get on that. Like I love the plug at the beginning. Besides SmartPad, that was pretty clutch.
Well, it is clutch. That's probably the one I use the most, because obviously like that's tied to work. But outside of that, I use that, and I use an app called Pool Math, because it helps me keep track of what I'm supposed to be putting in my pool, and kind of just how I don't want to turn it into like a turtle pond or raising frogs in it. So it makes sure everything goes in there.
There you go. And then, so what's one of your favorite networking events in this industry?
My SPE and API both put on great events. They have multiple great events. Honestly, the one that I look forward to the most usually is the hydraulic fracturing conference.
Yep.
It's kind of like it's kind of like going to a family reunion, is the way I describe it. You spend 20 years in frac, and you can't get away from it. And it's a huge industry, but it's a small group of people.
Yeah, and I love that one. I mean, so this year we had better weather. I think they pushed it a week or two, from my understanding. Typically it's freezing. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Like, I mean, I see people that I used to work with. I see people that I've worked adjacent to. It's because it's so completion centric, and it's a hydraulic fracturing conference is in the title. That's one of my all-time favorites, and ever since I've been going, it's just every year I look forward to that one.
Yeah, it's great.
I did have I guess it was the first one after COVID. I had the rare, according to my doctor, lucky or unlucky, depending on how you want to call it, where I got COVID and flu at that event.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Friday, everybody's a little bit rough on Friday after that.
A little bit.
Because there's so much networking going on.
Oh, yeah. Late night networking.
Yeah, late night networking. And I just felt a little bit worse than usual. And yeah, COVID and flu, I was very fortunate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that just gives you an excuse to kind of go hang out at the house for a minute.
Yeah, that's one where my voice is always gone.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's loud in there. And then there's all the networking that we're having to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of talking in loud places.
Yeah.
It's not a library.
No, it seems the later it goes, the louder it has to get.
That's 100%. Yeah. So that's always a great one. Be careful when you Uber.
Yes, absolutely.
Go on adventures.
I was gonna say you can make new friends.
You can make new friends. I made a great friend that evening.
Yeah, you did.
So probably we'll start to wrap up. You've been in this industry 21 years. Make you feel old. Any advice you would give to your younger self back when you were first starting out, besides run?
Yeah, run. Man, I don't really know. That's really a tough one. I honestly, and I probably kind of live by that now. I mean, it's it's serious, but don't take it that serious. It's not always that big.
Yeah.
I mean, don't read too much into it. There's a lot of things that happen for a lot of reasons, and it's all going to work out just like it's supposed to. I mean, it really is.
And I think that mentality is why me and you get along and have, you know, stayed in contact and become friends throughout the years is that kind of very calm approach. Like, it's going to happen, just don't panic.
Yeah.
Let's find our way out of it and let's move forward.
And that's really it. It's not, I mean, I'm not doing this on my time. I mean, it's going to come at me and it's going to work out just like it's supposed to. I mean, there's a reason for it. And I'm not the one that's going to do it. So we'll get it all figured out. And that's really kind of, I've come to figure out how to live by that. I used to be a really anxious person. I'm really not anymore. I mean, I just kind of try to do everything right that I know to do right. And just keep doing what I do. And
I always got it from my dad. He, you know, something would happen and he'd always be like, well, it could be worse.
Yeah, it could.
Okay, let's figure it out. You know,
that's really
always
it.
Be worse.
Yeah, I mean, really, when you get down to the core, just the crux of the problem, it's just an issue. It's just a problem. Just find a way to solve it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, there's a reason for it and there's a way out of it. Just kind of look at it and back up. If you made a mistake, just say, hey, I made a mistake. I screwed up. Can you forgive me? I didn't do it on purpose and I won't do it again.
Yeah.
And I teach my kids that. I try to teach, that's the biggest thing. That's, in life, that's what I've told both my kids. Like, listen, some of the hardest things to ever say is, I'm sorry. Like, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Like, it's very small words, but they mean a whole lot to whoever you're saying them to. And that builds character. And that's what the world's about, really.
100%.